Hello, dear learners, welcome back to our channel where English learning becomes an unforgettable adventure. Today we begin the incredible life story of one of the greatest leaders in history, Nelson Mandela. This is not just a story. It's a journey of hope, courage, and determination. Listening to this story will help you improve your English, vocabulary pronunciation, and listening skills. But more than that, it will inspire you to dream big and never give up no matter how hard life gets. So get ready for the most powerful and most motivational story you've ever heard. Let's start the journey of Nelson Mandela, a man who changed the world. Nelson Mandela was born on July 18, 1918, in a small, quiet village called Maso in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. His birth name was Roy Laha Mandela, which in the Shah language means pulling, the branch of a tree. Some people also say it means troublemaker, a name that would later reflect his boldness in challenging injustice he was born into. The Themo royal family, a tribe known for its rich history and culture. His father, Godla Henry Anaka Kiswa, was a respected chief and advisor to the Tambo king. Although Mandela's family was not wealthy, they were deeply respected in the community. His mother, Noah Kenny Fanny, was a devout Christian who taught him the importance of kindness, humility, and faith. Mandela's childhood was simple but filled with joy. He lived in a hut made of mud and straw, surrounded by open fields and rolling hills. There was no electricity, no running water, and no modern luxuries. But Mandela felt free and happy. As a young boy, he loved to run barefoot in the fields, herd cattle, and swim in the streams. He played traditional Xhosa games with his friends and listened to elders tell stories around the fire at night. These stories, often about brave warriors and leaders, lit a spark in young Mandela's heart. One day his father told him a real leader is not someone who wants power for himself, but someone who serves his people. These words stayed with Mandela throughout his life. When Mandela was only 9 years old, tragedy struck. His father fell ill and passed away. This was a devastating loss for the young boy, but it also marked a turning point in his life. After his father's death, Mandela's mother took him to live with Chief Jong Ndaba Dindo, a royal leader of the Themo people. Chief Jong Ntaba welcomed Mandela into his home as if he were his own son. For the first time, Mandela saw a life beyond his small village. He lived in the chief's palace, where he observed meetings and learned about leadership, tradition, and responsibility. Mandela began attending a local Methodist school at the age of 7. It was here that his teacher, Miss Mingan, gave him the name Nelson, as was the custom for African children to be given English names in schools. Although Mandela did not understand why he needed a new name, he accepted it and focused on his studies. He quickly became a diligent student, curious about everything he learned. He loved English literature, geography, and history, especially stories of African heroes who fought against colonial rule. Mandela often said, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." This belief drove him to study harder and dream bigger. As Mandela grew older, he became more aware of the inequalities around him. South Africa was ruled by the system of apartheid, which kept black and white people separated in every part of life. Black people were not allowed to vote, own land, or live in the same neighborhoods as white people. Mandela could see the unfairness everywhere. At the age of 16, Mandela participated in a traditional Eshaite ceremony where boys became men. During the ceremony, elders spoke about the responsibilities of manhood, but they also shared their sadness about the state of their people under apartheid. Mandela felt a deep sense of duty to fight for justice and equality. When Mandela was 19 years old, Chief Jong Ndaba arranged a marriage for him. But Mandela had other dreams. He wanted to continue his education and make his own choices, so he made a bold decision. He ran away to the bustling city of Johannesburg. In Johannesburg, Mandela saw a completely different world the city was. Vibrant but full of challenges, black. People worked hard for very little pay and lived in poor conditions while white. People enjoyed all the wealth and privilege. Mandela worked as a night watchman at a gold mine while continuing his education. He lived in a small, crowded room and often went hungry. But he never gave up. He believed that education would open doors to a better future. Mandela eventually enrolled at the University of White W. Rand, where he studied law. He was one of the few black students in the university and faced discrimination. But this only made him stronger. During this time, Mandela joined the African National Congress, a political organization fighting for the rights of black South Africans. He attended secret meetings where he listened to passionate speeches and shared his ideas for a fairer South Africa. Mandela dreamed of a South Africa where everyone, regardless of their race, could live together in peace and equality. He wanted to create a country where children could play together without fear, where families could build their futures, and where justice would prevail. This dream became the driving force of his life. But the road ahead was filled with challenges, sacrifices, and pain. When Mandela arrived in Johannesburg, he was just a young man, full of dreams. The city was alive with energy, but it was also full of challenges. Black people were treated as second-class citizens and forced to live in poor neighborhoods called townships. Mandela rented a small room in Alexandria, one of the poorest townships, and worked as a clerk in a law firm. The job was demanding, but it gave him a chance to learn about the legal system and how it was used to oppress black South Africans. He spent his evenings studying by candlelight, determined to finish his law degree. Mandela's hunger for knowledge was unstoppable. He often said, "I have walked that long road to freedom. I have tried not to falter. I've made missteps along the way, but I've discovered the secret that after climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb." The ANC had existed for many years, but Mandela and a group of young activists believed it needed a fresh approach. They formed FEC Youth League, which focused on mobilizing young people to fight against apartheid. Mandela's speeches were powerful and passionate. He spoke about justice, equality, and the need for action. People admired his courage and vision. One of his most famous lines was, "It always seems impossible until it's done while working." With the Mandela met a beautiful and intelligent woman named Evelyn and Toko Mays. Evelyn was a nurse, and she shared Mandela's dream of a better South Africa. They got married in 1944 and started a family. Mandela was a loving husband and father, but his commitment to the struggle often kept him away from home. Mandela's personal life was not easy. He had to balance his responsibilities as a father with his role as a leader. He once said, "There is no passion to be found in settling for a life that is less than the one you are capable of." Living in 1948, the South African government introduced new apartheid laws, making life even harder for black people. These laws dictated where black people could live, work, and even whom they could marry. Mandela and his colleagues in TC knew they had to act. Mandela helped organize peaceful protests, strikes, and marches. He believed in nonviolent resistance, inspired by the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi. Thousands of people joined the movement, risking their jobs, homes, and even their lives. But the government responded with violence. Protesters were beaten, arrested, and sometimes killed. Mandela himself was arrested multiple times, but he refused to give up. He said, "Courage is not the absence of fear. It is inspiring others to move beyond it." Despite the challenges Mandela achieved, One of his biggest dreams, he became a lawyer in 1952. He and his friend Oliver Tambo opened the first black law firm in South Africa, Mandela and TMO Attorneys. The firm provided free or low-cost legal help to black South Africans who were victims of apartheid. Mandela spent his days in courtrooms defending people who had been unfair treated. At night, he worked with the ANDC to plan the next steps in their fight for freedom. In 1960, a tragic event changed the course of Mandela's life. During a peaceful protest in the town of Sharpeville, police opened fire on the crowd, killing 69 people and injuring hundreds more. This massacre shocked the world and made Mandela realize that peaceful protests alone might not be enough. The government banned the CT, forcing Mandela and other leaders to go underground. They formed a secret armed group called Umano Wisiwi, which means Spear of the Nation. Mandela said their goal was not to harm people, but to sabotage government structures that upheld apartheid. Nelson Mandela became a wanted man. He traveled across South Africa in disguise, organizing protests and recruiting people for the struggle. He also traveled to other countries to gain support for the fight against apartheid. During this time, Mandela became known as the Black Pimpernel because he was so good at evading capture. But his life was full of danger. He couldn't see his family, and he knew that every day could be his last as a free man. In 1962, Mandela was arrested and charged with sabotage, treason, and attempting to overthrow the government. He used his trial as a platform to speak out against apartheid. In his famous speech, he said, "I have fought against white domination and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve, but if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." Mandela was sentenced to life imprisonment and sent to Robben Island, a bleak prison off the coast of Cape Town. Life in prison was harsh. Mandela was forced to do hard labor in a limestone quarry. He lived in a tiny cell with no bed and only a thin mat on the floor. The guards were cruel, and Mandela was allowed only one visitor and one letter every 6 months, but Mandela refused to be broken. He used his time in prison to study, reflect, and plan. He even learned the African language to understand his enemies better. He also taught younger prisoners about leadership and the importance of staying hopeful. Mandela said, "I am fundamentally an optimist. Whether that comes from nature or nurture, I cannot say. Part of being optimistic is keeping one's head pointed toward the sun, one's feet moving forward." As the years passed, Mandela became a symbol of hope for millions of people around the world. Protests against apartheid grew stronger, both inside and outside South Africa. World leaders and organizations called for Mandela's release, but the South African government refused when Mandela was imprisoned. Many thought his fight was over, but the truth was his imprisonment became the spark that ignited a global movement. Mandela spent 27 long years in prison, most of them on Robben Island. Every day was a test of his patience and willpower. The guards tried to humiliate him, but Mandela remained dignified. The work was grueling, but he kept his spirit strong. He once said, "I realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear." During those years, Mandela became more than a prisoner. He became a symbol of the fight against injustice around the world. People chanted "Free Nelson Mandela," his name was, whispered in schools, sung in protests, and carried on banners. While Mandela was in prison, South Africa became a nation under siege. The apartheid government faced increasing protests, strikes, and international sanctions. Countries refused to trade with South Africa. Famous musicians like Stevie Wonder and Bob Marley dedicated songs to Mandela, even in Pieri.